Welcome back to another episode of the Biker PM. I'm your host, Anthony Pavelich. Today we have with us Tim Creasey. He's a seasoned executive and globally recognized expert in the field of change management. His work forms the foundation of the largest body of knowledge in the world on the topic. For 2 decades, Tim has dedicated his career to helping individuals and organizations harness the power of the ADKAR model, transforming the industry with his research. Tim's work has also enabled thousands of change practitioners to move from vague notions about how individuals respond to change to a structured, rigorous approach for driving benefit realization on projects. So let's get started. Hi, Tim. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate you being here.
Hey, thank you for having me, Anthony. Excited to jump into the conversation.
Change management is a very big topic for project managers and for organizations as a whole. Today, we're going to focus on how that relates to the listeners, entrepreneurs. But go ahead and give us a little bit of a background about you and your involvement and ProSci and your involvement with ProSci, and then we'll take it from there and jump into our topics.
Very nice. So yeah, my name is Tim Creasey, the Chief Innovation Officer at ProSci. I've been here for about just over 20 years now. ProSci, so I lead the research and development side of the house. ProSci as an organization, our mission is to help individuals and organizations build their own change capabilities so that they can deliver more successful change outcomes. And what we have found as an organization and through our research is that the biggest gap between a beautifully designed solution and achieving sustained outcomes is helping our people bring that change to life and how they show up each day. And so this discipline of change management has really grown as a way to bring repeatability and scalability to helping our people through the changes we're asking them to take on when we implement a project or an initiative, or even just a change that might be less formalized. If we're talking about a smaller organization, it's being thoughtful about how we prepare, equip, and support our people through the change we're asking them to make, because if they are more successful, we know the project will achieve what it set out to, and then the organization gets closer to who it wants to become, because people are that universal common denominator of successful change. So that's kind of who we are as an organization. We certainly service, practitioners. Larger organizations will have job roles focused on change management, and so we have programs and tools designed for that group. We train other parts of the organization as well to help senior leaders better understand how to be that active and visible sponsor in times of change, how to help our people managers really be those superheroes that we know they need to be in times of change, and really help organizations build muscle at being more effective when they try to reimagine who they can be as an organization. So ProSci.com is the external web face, and one of the things we're known for is how much free material we put out on ProSci.com. So your listeners can certainly jump over there and watch replays of webinars, read articles, thought leadership. But really, in the end, our goal is to help organizations deliver better outcomes and change through their people.
People are the key common denominator for organization success. And I think getting their buy-in and helping them understand what's happening instead of pushing out that information is a key component of getting them to adapt what the change is. Otherwise, you shared a meme today, which was funny, or a little picture on LinkedIn about, yay, the project's done, goal achieved, but you still have this whole vision of the adoption of what that change is. And without that change management, a lot of times you'll see organizations go through, or even small entrepreneurs, whatever, create this whole new process, create this whole new product, or this whole new change, but then everybody just reverts back to doing it the way it was done, because that's what they know, and they don't understand why the change is happening.
Yeah, it reminds me of that the best laid plans of mice and men, Gangaftagli, right? We have these beautiful solutions, these beautiful ideas about how we want to make the organization better, or reduce errors, or reduce costs, or increase market share, or serve the customer in a new way. But there's a pretty big gap between that idea and actually realizing it in the organization, and helping our people. Our people is what closes that gap, right? Mm-hmm. I actually think the technology spend at the end of the 90s is why this discipline of change management has grown so much in the last 2 decades. Because if you remember back in the late 90s, organizations are investing in these huge technology solutions. You put a $20 million solution in, you get 2.5% user uptake, and then you go find the next $20 million solution to put in, right? It was this we were so enamored by the technology that we weren't actually getting the value of these solutions. And those times have changed. All of us have such limited time and energy and capacity that when we put ourselves into trying to make something change in the organization, we need it to succeed. And helping our people to be able to say, I understand why, I've decided to, I know how to, I'm able to, I'll continue to. That's how we help our people make that transition. And if we can start to think about our changes that we want to bring to life from both kind of a technical perspective and a people side perspective, then we are really equipped to be structured and intentional in driving towards what it takes to achieve success.
Yeah, it's that shiny object that they're reaching for, but then they really don't know how to use that shiny object once they get it. They want to obtain it and they want it, and then they get it, and the use isn't what oh, the shiny object didn't do what we thought it was going to do.
For sure.
It's not only technology, but I think it's also processes and those key terms. Everybody wants change management. They bring in it, but they don't know how to do it. Or they want agile. Let's be agile, but they don't really understand it. So they bring it in and it doesn't work. So it's actually having them not only going for that shiny object that's out there, but also then understanding it and helping implement it.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of this gets anchored into to what end, right? What is our actual finish line? Is the finish line go live, flipping the switch? Or is the finish line being more connected to our customers because of this new relational customer relationship management system we're using, right? Is the to what end saying that we do agile, or is the to what end delivering solutions that are more aligned with what people need when we deliver them, because we've been able to be more iterative and connected to the user problem? So a lot of this gets tied into anchoring on what we're trying to achieve and then figuring out all the moving parts that help us get there. So.
And not just looking at this nice new key term or this new shiny object everybody's talking about, but understanding how it plays a role into what they're trying to accomplish.
For sure. It reminds me a little bit of Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, right? Where you have the why in the middle, the how around it, and then the what farther out. And I think it's one of those huge insights that he was able to bring to us early on around reorienting from the why out is how we gain consensus and buy-in and commitment and understanding. But all too often we start on the what and then start to move in. And that's where the shiny objects lose their luster really quick, is when the what is where we start, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to talk about two different topics today briefly to introduce our listeners to how change management can help them building their business or with their customers, running projects and changes with their customers. We're going to talk about unified value proposition and ADKAR. So we're going to start with unified value proposition. So explain to us what that is, and then we'll jump in and how entrepreneurs can use it.
Very nice. So, and I think we'll include a link probably in the show notes about the unified value proposition, maybe even a little YouTube video clip. The unified value proposition really is it's a conceptual container. It's a way to describe change in the moving parts that we can have impact on and understand. So we begin by thinking about what is change. And we describe it as a step out of a current state. So the way things are today, and they might be broken, but they're known and comfortable. Then we move through a transition state, and it's messy and it can be curvy and take turns and loop around. But that transition is that movement to ultimately arrive at that future state, a new way of doing things. As an individual, it might be new processes, new systems, new tools, new job roles, new critical behaviors, new mindsets, new performance reviews, new reporting structures, new compensation, new location. At an individual level, my future state is how my job is different. But organizationally, it's maybe moving from a couple of legacy systems to an integrated system, or moving from two small organizations merging into a single entity. So change is moving out of the current through a transition to arrive at a future state. And there's some really, we go all the way back to Arnold van Gennep, a cultural anthropologist who was looking at rites of passage around the world back in 1907. And he's the first one that really describes change as stepping out of how we are today through some sort of liminal moment to arrive at that new way of being. So that's how we describe change. Change always begins for a reason. And so that sits at the beginning of this unified value proposition. And those reasons for change, they can be internal, they could be external, they could be based in how things are happening today, or they could be based in an aspiration, a way that we want the organization to be in 1 year or 2 years or 5 years. But those reasons for change are important. That's the trigger, right? That's how the change got initiated. At the end of this change, we hopefully deliver success, some sort of market improvement in how we are showing up as an organization. So that's change, starts with the reason, ends with success. And then we talk about change kind of like a coin, where it has two sides. So at the above this unified value proposition, we talk about the technical side of change. And the technical side of change is around designing, developing, and delivering a solution that meets that need or opportunity in front of us. And there's all different tools and approaches. There's sequential and iterative ways to solve that. There's continuous process improvement. There's all kinds of technology-enabled technical solutions, but certainly there are technical solutions that aren't technology-enabled, new processes, new values. But the technical side of the change coin is the nuts and bolts of the solution. And then the other side of the coin is the people side of change. And that's how we help our people engage with, adopt, and use the solutions that we're bringing forward. And that's really where the domain and discipline of change management lives. The domain and discipline of project management helps us manage that technical side of the change coin. The discipline of change management helps us manage that people side of the change coin. So current, transition, future, there's a technical side and a people side. There's always a reason for change, and there's always a success, a finish line that we're trying to get to. And so we can kind of start to draw change on a page if we start to understand all of these moving parts.
Yeah, because for somebody who's the solopreneur or the entrepreneur, that change can be, they want to expand the services they're offering. It could be their own desire or something, I'm now just consulting on this. I want to move on to consult to this, or I'm building websites. I want to start building apps to go along with those websites. So the change that they want internally, but it could also be something their customers asking for, something they've never done before. And it's an opportunity now. There's a change happening. So how do I manage this change? What do I do internally for myself to do it, as well as for my own business?
Yeah, absolutely. Because that trigger for change could be me identifying something I want to improve.
Mhm.
It could be me coming forward with a new solution or offering that I've concocted. Or I think you're right, especially in that small business setting, a lot of the change we're implementing is sort of real time. In response to a particular customer challenge, we are deciding that we need to show up in a new way. What's interesting, Anthony, is a lot of times the technical side of change gets a lot of attention.
It
Right?
does.
We spend a lot of time thinking about all the nuts and bolts of that app that we're going to build. And too often we underpay attention to how do we actually help people engage with, adopt, and use this thing that we're bringing forward. So we end up with solutions without results, right? Which can be devastating for a small business that doesn't necessarily have all the extra energy to invest in a change that doesn't deliver what we expected out of it. So
Yeah, or starting to complete something, a customer asks them for something, so they do it, and it's not adopted by the customer. It's not so helping, I think it's important that the entrepreneur, the business owner understands change management as well, so they can have that discussion with their customer. Great, we can do this. How do you intend to ensure that it's used? How do you intend to make sure that it's adopted or that it's successful? And isn't just, okay, we've done it and it stops.
absolutely, right? Because that extended, whether it's renewal or a relationship,
Mhm.
that next round of revenue that we're going to expect from that customer comes from the value they get out of bringing this solution to life. And if they roll your solution out across, 50 people in the organization and only one of them is actually using the solution, you're not going to get that call back.
Yeah.
You're not going to get to extend that relationship with that customer. And so, especially with the kind of solutions we see today, right? Cloud-based solutions, the switching cost is so low. Back in the day, I used to buy that CD. Remember CD-ROMs?
Yes.
Yeah, right. That was how we used to get software. And I would buy the one in 2003 and I'd put it in the, people today think those are coffee mug holders that pop out of desktops, but those used to be where we put CD-ROMs.
It's so funny because I actually have a CD-ROM adapter in my drawer.
No, you don't.
Well, it's actually to plug into my Mac that I probably can't tell you the last time I used it. But it's here because, we do have, and I think it's mostly here because I have pictures on CD-ROMs because we used to have a CD, those writers, so we could write stuff to them. And now it's all on flash drives or the clouds. Flash drives was the next.
Those are the CD-ROMs that we've not got to the cloud yet, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and then there was the little flash drives. But, think about software back in the day. You bought the CD-ROM, you had it until you bought the next CD-ROM. So adoption and usage didn't really matter that much to the person who was selling you the CD-ROM because they had you in for the next 4 to 5 to 7 years or whatever. Today, if I get fed up with a service, I can disconnect and spin up a different service, right? Mm-hmm. In a matter of minutes. And so I think this is a really interesting connection, Anthony, right? That adoption and usage becomes a differentiator for an organization who's bringing a solution that requires people to change.
Because we're not paying $400 or $500 now for software. We're paying, $5, $6, $10 a month that we can switch at any time.
Right. Absolutely.
So it is the adoption. Like you said, you can switch in an instant if you want to. And there's so many similar services out there now. I mean, if you're not happy with Microsoft Office, Microsoft Online, you've got Google Sheets, which is becoming very much comparable to it now.
You can just bounce right around, right? My partner for the last 20 years, she taught elementary school physical education, right? So PE for 6-year-olds to 11-year-olds. And one of the phrases she used in class a lot was, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Right. So if you got the blue ball, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. That's kind of what it used to be like, right? In terms of being a consumer of certain types of technology. You got what you got and you don't throw a fit. But you're right. This digital revolution that's been happening over the last however many years has really changed the nature of the game. And if I am an entrepreneur providing a solution to a client, the adoption and usage of the solution I bring to them will directly impact my staying power, my revenue or potential, and ultimately the value I bring to that client or customer.
And it could be reputation even. I mean, because we know people talk, and especially now with social media, reviews can be out there just like, in an instant. I use this person. I didn't get any value out of what they did for me. So are they going to refer anybody to me? Because that's a lot of times that's, as small businesses and entrepreneurs, you depend on referrals.
Absolutely.
Any other insights to the unified value proposition?
Yeah, so that's kind of how we build it out, right? We got the reason for change. And what's interesting is we kind of talked about how those reasons can be different. And so I'd encourage, if I'm an entrepreneur and I'm thinking about a change that I want to bring to life, or I'm a team leader and I'm thinking about a change that I want to bring to life, I end up with a blank piece of paper, oriented landscape, and over on the left, what are the reasons, the actual reasons for change? Can I get really crisp and clear? Because Anthony, a lot of times those reasons for change can get lost. I was working with a huge pharmaceutical a couple of years ago, and we have a change scorecard where we capture a lot of the metrics of a moving change that we want to measure to see how the change is doing. The very beginning of that scorecard is the results and outcomes we expect from this change. This organization was a couple of years and a very large spend into this project. And I said, okay, the very first cell we're going to fill out is what are the results and outcomes we expect out of this change? And I'm standing at the flip chart and it was about as silent as it was just now, right? And I kind of did the pretend like tap the mic move. And I was like, is this thing on? What are the results and outcomes we are trying to achieve out of this change? And everyone just kind of looked down at their desk. And somebody pulled me aside after.
It's that Bueller moment. If anybody,
Bueller,
exactly.
Bueller. Yeah, I mean, it was so awkward and so common in changes, right? That we can't articulate. And somebody pulled me aside and they said, Tim, here's the thing. Someone somewhere at some point in time understood the results and outcomes of this change, but that kind of evaporated and got lost. And so now on my blank sheet of paper on the left-hand side, I've articulated and captured the reasons for change. So now that's an anchor for this. Over on the right-hand side of my page, I write down what is success? What are the objectives and what are the outcomes for the organization that we want out of this change? And I get real clear and articulate those and capture those because, again, that gives me the flag on the horizon that we're driving to for this change. Across the top, I start capturing the implications around designing, developing, and delivering the solution. And across the bottom, I start capturing thoughts around how to engage, adopt, and use, and ensure that the solution comes to life in the way people show up. Now, that is what we'd call a blank sheet exercise, right? We, of course, as a change management firm, have a whole sophisticated methodology and set of integrated tools that help the practitioner really advance that. But getting that on a page orientation to where we're trying to go, where we're stepping out of, what we expect during that transition and what we're trying to achieve. I mean, that to me is the level of clarity we can start to bring to change so that we can actually get momentum and movement out of it.
And connect everything together.
Absolutely, right. The gift of connection, right?
So we understand from the start to beginning, what is this change for? Instead of just let's do it and then not understand, obviously, how are we going to do it? What are we expecting from it? And how does it affect our people? We're not grabbing that shiny object and just doing it just because we want the shiny object.
Absolutely. I used to use the phrase, maybe I guess I still do because I'm going to use it right now. Chasing aspirations, right? Rather than actually pursuing a change to improve the performance of the organization, we sometimes find ourselves chasing aspirations. Like, let's get closer to the customer. Yeah, absolutely. But that's not a change we can solution to and manage to in the organization. And so adding this level of clarity helps us decide, what we're going to do to make things happen. And I think it's even more important today, Anthony, and especially given your audience. I came across a book a couple of years ago called The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F by Mark Manson. Have you read this one?
No.
Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. Now, from the title, you would think the book is going to be like, don't care what people think about you, right? And so I was sharing it with one of my teammates, how much this book impacted me. And she goes, I didn't really think you cared what other people thought about you anyways. And I was like, no. That's not the premise of the book. And he doesn't use this analogy, but here's the analogy I made to describe the notion of the book. We each have a bag with a finite number of F's to give in it. Like and we just have a certain number of F's we can give about things. Now, the challenge is we give F's about everything that comes across our desk. And then all of a sudden, something big comes across the desk and you've run out of F's to give. Your bag is empty. You have no more F's to give. And it's a thing that really needs an F to be given to it, right?
Yeah.
And so the premise of the book is how do you shape your structure, your value system so that you are given the F's to the things that you need to, and you're not given an F to the things that don't warrant given an F to. And I think as an entrepreneur, it's one of the biggest challenges we have is deciding where to put our finite energy, where to expend our limited calories each day. Where are we going to put those F's? If we can get crisp and clear around the changes that we're trying to bring to life, now all of a sudden I know, is that a change that deserves one F? 3 F's, maybe no F's. But we can't do that until we've started to wrap our head around the moving parts that it's going to take to bring that change to life. I don't understand how to make trade-off decisions. I don't understand true cost and investment or opportunity cost. I think miscalculation of opportunity cost is probably the biggest challenge everybody has, is deciding the cost of not. What am I giving up to do this thing instead of those things? And so a lot of it gets down to this, where do we give our F's? And I think the unified value proposition, if we can get each of the changes If I have 3 big changes I'm thinking about taking on, I can get each of them on this blank sheet canvas. Now I'm in a much better place to be thoughtful around where to expend my energy, how to sequence things, where I'm going to get the bang for the buck. Or as one of our great collaborators here at ProSci says, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And I don't know how to make that evaluation until I've actually figured out what is the juice and how much is the squeeze. So
that how many F's do I have to give reminds me, and I teach this all the time in project management, and I talk about this all the time in all my classes, because you think about it with you, it's a time management thing as well. I mean, you relate it to, if I give the same attention to every email, then if every email is just as important, none of them are important. If every stakeholder is just as important, none of them are important. You have to prioritize what is the most valuable that I can do right now, and then deprioritize, put stuff at the bottom. I know I have things on my to-do list that are just really minor that sometimes transfer for a couple of days until I get to them because they're not important. So it's like, you have to prioritize what do I need to give an F about today? And what can wait a week? Same thing with and I fell into this when I first became an entrepreneur, is we want to do everything, but you can't do everything. So you have to prioritize what, again, gives me the biggest bang for the buck. Which ones are priority now? Which things do I want to do eventually in my business that can wait? And how does it affect me as a whole?
Yeah,
and I think that blank sheet exercise is a great way to prioritize what you want to do as well, I think.
Yeah, it gives us that level of understanding that lets us, I think, make meaningful prioritization decisions, right? And there's all kinds, Steve Jobs has the quote about strategy is what you say no to, not what you say yes to. Eisenhower's box around urgency and importance. I think it was one of the Roosevelt presidents here in the United States that said, if you have more than 3 priorities, you have none. I think there's a lot of this wisdom and insight around the fact that this is necessary. I think people sometimes get that blank stare when they don't have tools or perspectives or frameworks or conceptual containers to make sense of, is this more important than that? Is this more urgent than that? And so that notion of how do we lay out the priorities? And I think you're right. This blank sheet exercise lets me put my head around change in a way that lets me make sense of where does it stack up to everything else that's going on.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Biker PM. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you think. And remember, if you're an entrepreneur that wants to be with like-minded individuals and improving their project management skills, join the Biker PM Facebook group and watch out for some exciting news coming soon. Until next time.